And I think, especially for young kids, there should not be a lot of TV. They should not be having their own phones or iPads. And because I really just don't think it's helpful, And for me, when I think about what I'll do when I'm older, I will not be giving my children devices until they're a certain age. And then that can be a discussion of what they can use. And if it's something like a flip phone, okay, I want to stay in contact and I want my child to have a way of reaching me. And I don't know about child, but right around that, maybe 13, 12, when they're going out or they're doing something, or they go on vacation with a friend, you want to be able to call them. Having something like a flip phone or something like that is nice to have. So you can call them or you can message them and check in what's going on. But they don't need TikTok and they don't need Instagram and they don't need Snapchat. And when they have that smartphone, you're not keeping them away from that.
Hi everyone, welcome to my podcast, Fatherhood from the Heart. My name is Efren Martinez and I am a father of 6 amazing children, a longtime educator and a coach. I created this podcast to inspire and open the hearts of fellow men, fathers and parents who want to grow and to develop a greater connection with their children, partners and themselves. It shall also inspire in looking at the importance of our personal growth, the desire in looking at old ideas through new lenses, and the discoveries of our hidden potentials. I'm so glad you're joining me today to listen to my podcast. I'm so excited to share this episode with you, for I have a very special young guest in the studio with me today. His name is Efren, and he's not only a mature and special young man, but also my son. Efren is 16 years old and a junior in high school. He has 7 siblings and is part of a modern-day patchwork family. As one of the youngest of 8, Efren recognized quickly that the only constant in his life was change. This was not always easy for him, but he learned to accept and embrace and even love that aspect of his life and make the most of it. Today, Efren talks to us about the beautiful moments and the great challenges of his upbringing. Efren also shares some good insights of what children and teens want and need from their parents today. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hello, Efren. Welcome to Fatherhood from the Heart, the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here and that you have agreed to speak to me about your childhood and your upbringing. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm super happy to be here.
Efren, I'm going to ask you a range of questions. Some are going to be maybe a little bit more personal than others. Just for the audience, nothing has been rehearsed. So everything's spontaneous here for Efren. If you don't want to answer one or the other question, you're welcome to say so. It's going to be just a general conversation about your experiences as part of a patchwork family, modern patchwork family. You're one of 8. You're the 6th in the lineup. And most of your siblings are older, but you also have some that are younger. And I just figured we could just get an all-round experience of a patchwork family to other families out there, so you can just answer open, honestly, what is being brought up here. So, how was that for you growing up as in being one of 8, being the 6th in the lineup, growing up in a patchwork family that was not always together?
Yeah, I really enjoyed having such a big family and having all those siblings, being able to do things. I felt it was quite hard when they were moving around or leaving after a weekend of having all this fun. And I just remember that feeling of kind of like, oh no, don't leave yet, and just wanting to spend more time. I always felt it was really nice to have all those people to be around you, and they just brought a lot of joy and light into my life, and I really appreciate them all.
Yeah, I remember that. That was heart-wrenching for me to see. Every time they left, just for you were very little, and you didn't really understand why everyone had to leave. And it was just, I was really heartbreaking to see that, and I always felt a lot of guilt that you were growing up in those circumstances. So maybe we just stay with that a little bit. What were for you the greatest challenges of that constellation, the family's constellation, or your childhood in general? What did you feel was the most challenging thing?
With so many siblings, obviously there comes some disagreements or disappointments sometimes. I remember just being one of the younger siblings, which made it hard to fit in some of the time. So I remember always wanting to be with the big kids, and they just wanted to do their own thing, and I didn't really know how to fit in. So I just kind of be a little all over the place. But yeah, I feel the majority of the time everybody was very welcoming and wanted to do things together. I know that I had a few issues here and there where I just would feel that sibling annoyance, right? So you feel frustrated. Well, how come you're not letting me do this? Or why can't I hang out with you? Or why do you get to stay up later? And just feeling like, why are they getting something I'm not getting? But in all, I think it was really amazing just to have them all there and do things. Yeah.
And if you look at the flip side of it, what would you describe as your most beautiful childhood memory? Is there something that stands out that you just really cherish for yourself?
I loved just being outside. Like I just have all these memories of being out, whether it was with our dog or out in the chicken coop, just doing something. I have these great memories when we were on the farm of just playing out in the woods and building little forts and out in the field. And I just kind of go into my imagination and just make up all these stories, running away and just doing my own thing. And I feel like that is where most of the enjoyment from being a child was, right? Is just how much I could make up in my mind, that I just make up these amazing stories, which I feel is something I can't do in the same way now that I'm older. I'd love to reopen that because that was just so awesome to go into that and get so invested and spend hours out in the fields and in the woods just doing my thing.
You just mentioned a little bit the challenges sometimes with the siblings, or the dynamics with the children, with the other siblings, I would call them. It is quite normal for siblings to fight and to have disagreements and challenges, or feeling competitive or jealous or whatever it may be. How do you feel? I mean, is there something where you feel that parents that could do better in guiding and supporting children and siblings to work through disagreements?
That's a really good question. I'm not exactly sure. I know that it would have been helpful if when those situations were going on that they weren't just kind of left to be that way, right? So I remember specifically with one of my siblings, we just kind of constantly be getting into a problem, right? And I feel like nobody really paid attention to that, and it never was worked out. So then it just was always this back and forth, just getting into problems, and we were just kind of ignored. And I wish we had just kind of been talked to more and worked on that. I think that would have made it a lot better for the both of us.
What would you have liked to hear during such a situation?
Just to kind of sit down and talk with that specific sibling on what really is the problem, which as a child is very hard to do. So I feel like me saying that is a little bit like, can you really do that when you're so young? Because you're got all this energy, you kind of just want to do your own thing anyway, right? So I think it's a difficult situation in the first place, right, to deal with. But yeah, I think learning how to communicate, right? And so you're not getting to this point of just like going at each other and causing this whole problem that then everybody else is frustrated with you about, and you're just feeling like, hang on, I'm just trying to like get a point through, right? And you're not able to really talk in that same sense and sit down and have that conversation. So for somebody else to kind of step in and say, okay, I'm going to help guide you both in that direction, right? Because you can't do that on your own. You're not going to be able to, as a child, sit down and say, okay, let's have this face-to-face conversation and work on this. You know, you need that help. You need that guidance to go through that.
As parents, it's often very challenging to set the right boundaries. If they're too firm, we can create childhood traumas. If they are too loose, then the child can be endangered in safety. What is your view on boundaries, and where did you see them as helpful, and where did you see them as burdensome?
So growing up, I remember there being very strong boundaries. And I think as I got more into my teenage years, they definitely kind of started going away a little bit. I think boundaries are good, right? And at the same time, I think they really keep a child who is growing, right? They're growing, they're learning through all these things. It keeps a child from truly learning, right? And understanding what's happening and what will happen and all these things. I've met countless people my age, and they are very scared to do anything. Even to go out in the woods and do something that's a little bit more rustic, as I would say, because their parents would say, no, you have to be very safe and you can't go out in the woods. And if you get a cut, then it's a big problem and all these things. And I'm thankful for me that it was a little bit more loose around that and encouraged to go out and, yes, to be safe, right? But to go out and explore on my own and to figure these things out instead of just, no, I want you inside and I don't want you going anywhere because I need to keep you safe, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're all our own being, right? And we should not be fully controlled. Those boundaries should be there to keep us safe. And there are certain boundaries that really should be put down, right? Like we don't want to just run across the road when cars are coming by. That should be taught. Okay, we're waiting, we're looking both ways. And that's a really good example, actually, for a good boundary. But when we put too many boundaries up, the child just becomes, and that's how I felt, fearful than to go out into the world and try these new things, which I now have worked on more to just kind of tell myself, like, no, okay, even though I was told, don't do this, or made to almost feel fearful of something, to be like, no, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have this own experience, and I'm going to decide what I truly think about it. And I've seen through doing certain things that, whether mom or you would think, oh, that's dangerous or this, that, and I've done those things and I go, what? I've actually really enjoyed, and I understand where the fear comes, of course, and this is your child and you don't want anything happening to them. But I think it's just so important for them to kind of go and do those things and see for themselves and figure it out for themselves, whether they like doing that or not.
We as adults, we tend to be, especially my generation, I think, and the generation before me even more so, but we sometimes have a hard time expressing our feelings. We are a little closed off. We are a little, it's taken a lot of effort for us to open up, which is a work in progress. I've been working for quite some time, and I'm hoping at some point to really be fully open and being able to make myself vulnerable, also to my children, which I think is so important growing up. How do you see your generation doing with that?
I think that my generation has done very well, especially to the older generations, right? That's more of a focus, right? Now that depression or anxiety, all those things are kind of focused on more and told to open up and share all those things. However, I think all those stereotypes are still there, which I feel less than a lot of other people. I've talked with people who really feel that strongly, and I try to encourage them to, work on that, right? So a lot of these kids, even though they agree even that they should share the emotions, right? And they'll go and they'll talk to other people and they're happy to listen to other people. They don't want to share their own trauma and their own pain or any of that, because they just feel like then that they're showing a weakness, both in guys and girls. It's not just a one-way thing. And, something for me is I really want to encourage speaking up and being able to share all of that. I think a lot of people think that hiding the emotions or not crying or not sharing something that happened makes them stronger. And, something I tell people is when you can share that, when you can cry in front of another person, that truly shows your strength, right? Just that you can feel comfortable. And back to just being a human being, right? Those emotions come along with being a human being, and they're there. And there's no point in keeping them locked up or trapped inside you. They're there to let out, to share. And so I think it's really important for adults and for the children to just start to feel comfortable in that. And I understand it's a very difficult thing, and it's very hard for people to feel comfortable in that situation. But I think even just taking small steps to that, so that once we have children, we can help them, right, have that same thing. I think for so many years, it's just everybody's told, don't share your emotions, don't let this out, don't do this. And it's just going to continue if we don't break that and say, no, it's okay to share your emotions. It's good to share your emotions. It's healthy to share your emotions. And that's what we need to start doing, because doing it the other way is not helping anybody whatsoever.
So that is still part of your generation too, then. Do you see that amongst your friends, that they still have that struggle to overcome that they're afraid to show their true feelings?
Yeah.
Huh.
Definitely.
Okay, I would have thought that's a little bit better, because it's so much more of the mainstream now to talk about one's feelings, to talk about one's problems, and to feel accepted.
Right, and I do think it has gotten a lot better, but it's definitely still there. Okay. And if it wasn't, then it wouldn't be brought up. And I think what needs to happen is that shouldn't even be something that has to come up in a conversation. Is sharing your emotions okay? And I've talked with multiple people, friends, and just they've shared that, that they're like, no, I can't do that because then I'm weak and I can't show that. And I'll tell them, like, no, you can share that, and that doesn't change anything. It's really good and healthy for you to just let that out. Mm-hmm. And I think people sometimes get overwhelmed when somebody starts sharing their emotions. Well, maybe what do I do, or how do I deal with this? And I think really what people need to come to is it's not about doing something, right? Especially in that current moment. Letting that child or your friend just share their feelings and letting it out, that is really what needs to happen. You don't need to have a solution for them. You don't need to tell them what to do, but just to be there so that they have somebody to vent to let this out to. Because when you have something and you just have to hold it inside, it's like if you had a backpack and you just had a bunch of rocks in it. You wouldn't want to be carrying those rocks around. You'd want to take them out of the bag. And that's the same thing with your emotions. When you have so many emotions, anger, sadness, all these things, and when you're holding them inside, it's like having a backpack on filled with rocks. And so you need to take that backpack and you got to start taking those rocks out one by one and just working through them. And that's when you'll start to feel much better. And I've experienced that myself. Mm-hmm. So I can definitely say that is a really important thing to do.
I love the image of the backpack, and you're so right. I mean, we just, like, with every experience we have, good or bad, we keep adding that and we keep carrying that around. And if we don't get rid of those that really drag us down, then we really suffer. I mean, I have to say, I'm someone who's been closed off. I'm one of those people who's been just carrying those stones around up until very recently, where I've been trying to unpack that backpack and to work through that and see which stones do I really want to keep and which ones do I need to work on. So you speak a little bit here from the perspective of those that are struggling. Now, what could we as parents, if you had like a message to the parents, to help their children to come out and to not get into that repetition of shutting down, of being closed off, of putting those stones in the backpacks? How can we as parents help our children to feel safe and open so that they can communicate and come to us?
Yeah, well, I think I'll give an example of a child coming home from school. They had a bad day at school and they come home and they just want to talk about it, right? Whether it was a struggle with a teacher, maybe it was with friends, and they say, oh, I couldn't stand this today. It was so horrible. And maybe they're even crying. And the parent goes, but that's just how school is. When I went through it, so you can go through it. Or you need to do this because this is the best way to do it, right? And stop complaining because you're so privileged or you're being spoiled. And I think that is what really needs to stop, was that you just need to listen to that child letting out those feelings, letting out that emotion. I mean, that's at its core where it is. If we as people never told somebody that why are you crying about it? It's fine. Why are you telling them what they need to do? If they want to cry, they can cry, and that's perfectly fine. And when we're telling them not to, we're shutting that person down, right? And then in their brain, and especially as a child, they take it in and they're thinking, okay, hang on, I need to stop complaining about that stuff. And then they start doing it with bigger problems and emotions as they're getting older, and these really stressful things are going on in their life, and they're like, no, well, hang on, everybody has to go through this. I'm going to lock it away. I'm not going to talk about it. And it feels uncomfortable to talk about it, because when I was a child and I bring it up in my household and with my mom or my dad, and they would tell me, oh, why are you acting this way? Why are you crying about it? It's not that big of a deal. And then they just don't want to share anything. Of course, you don't want to let it out, because all you get when you share it is backlash. You don't get somebody there who's just going to be like, oh, here I am. I'm going to let you let this out. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to listen to you. We can talk about it. And I can even share my feelings around it. They don't get that. All they have in their mind is that when I'm going to bring this up, somebody's going to go against me, right? And I think that's what needs to stop, is we need to stop blocking that and just being open and letting all of that come out, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it's so true. So true. I mean, I still have, way into my adult life, I can remember situations where I was still worried and afraid to talk to my dad about certain things because of how I was brought up. And there was a lot of that, not that, again, like what you said earlier, he never did anything out of malintent. It was really just the best he could, but he was very strict. And so they were later, I never told my parents personal things. And they were things that I just, into my adult life, I was still worried. What was he going to say? What was he going to think? And that's not a nice feeling. That certainly is not a nice feeling. And that's also, I know, as your dad, that I've made mistakes with you. I certainly did them with your older siblings more so. These old ways of education, these old ways of bringing up our children. And I do think that, that we've come a long way as a society, but there's more work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's thank you for sharing that from your perspective. I think that's can help a lot of parents out there. You are a child of a modern patch family. Your mom and I were divorced. We had a challenging marriage, to say the least. Mm-hmm. Did care a lot about each other, but we had a lot of very, very difficult moments together, which led to our divorce. And that also meant that I was not there for you a lot of the time. And physically, we lived very far apart from each other. I don't know if that's too personal, but maybe you would want to share a little bit how that was for you. And I'm going to have some follow-up questions for that.
Yeah, I'd love to share about that. It was definitely a hard thing to go through. I remember at first, it was kind of like, oh, what really just happened, right? So at first you're kind of still processing, and I was like, okay, yeah. And part of me felt happy that there wasn't this tension in the household, right? And growing up, you always felt that tension from the arguing and the yelling. It was just like, whoa, what do I do? And just like, so that feeling of, okay, that's not in the household was nice. However, because that meant I was in a completely different place from you, I really started to feel like what do I do? Where's I look up to you as my father, is just looking up to you, wanting to be like you, wanting to follow in your path, just like everything to make you proud. And then it was just gone, right? I just lost this person I wanted to do things with, that I wanted to explore with. And so for me, it was like, I didn't really know what to do. I felt like I lost that person that I looked up to, and then I didn't have it. And so that was definitely hard.
Just going back to what you said a little bit, the tension was gone. So are you saying that in many ways you were grateful that the tension was gone? So would you have liked for your mom and I to work it out, to stay together? Or did you see it, in retrospect, you feel that this was the right thing for everyone involved, also for you as children in particular? And the reason I'm asking is because I think that this is a question that many parents ask themselves, when they're having marital issues. They just they want to stay together often because of the children.
Mm-hmm.
They want to keep working at it. And it often becomes the question, what is the right thing for the children? Is it really the right thing for the parents to stay together just for the children? Or are you giving more harm? So maybe from your perspective and your experiences, because you did experience us trying a lot for a long time, just staying together. If you could describe that also for other parents who may be going through situations like that.
Yeah, I think everybody hopes that it could all work out, right? And that it'll all be okay, and there won't be any problems, and there won't be any arguing, right? And yelling. And I think at a certain point, like you said, is it being helpful, or is it just causing more harm? And for me, when I look back to that, I'll say, I am grateful that my parents split up, and they did get divorced. And I do wish that it had actually happened sooner, because in the household, it just wasn't nice, and so it just became a big struggle to be living in a household where there was so much going on between the adults, to the point where then as a child, it just felt like I'm on my own. What do I do? Right. And, you discussed, of course, as a parent, you're trying to work through it to help the child. But when you're so focused on this other thing, right, in those situations, the majority of the time, you're actually separating yourself from the child more, because you're so caught up in trying to fix this for the child that you actually let them fall way down. And all they're looking for is somebody to come and be there with them and for them, right? So at a certain point, and for me, that is something I stand by. It's just, I wish it had happened sooner, because I really think it was causing more harm than good in the end.
I'm sorry. It was very painful. No, I know it was very painful for everyone involved.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that a little bit, if I may, just take it a little step further. I mean, we went through the divorce and all the stuff that went with that. And now both your mom and I are in new relationships, which means it creates also new dynamics and it expands the family even more.
Mm-hmm.
How's that for you?
I don't know exactly how to answer that, actually. There's good things and there's not great things about it. And so I've had to work through some things. There's still things that I know I need to work on, and it can feel definitely a little uncomfortable at times. And I think the biggest problem is actually working on, right? The more you leave those things to the side, the bigger of a problem they become. And I felt that mostly at home with my mom and her partner. Just that feeling of, oh, what do I do and how do I act? And now I'm feeling frustrated, but I'm not working through the frustration. I don't know how to talk about it, because just like I was explaining, I now have my own fears of how do I speak about it, right? And just I just want to put it to the side, and I just want to ignore it. and not make it into a problem because I don't want to cause any problems for anybody. And so I think really just as the adults trying to make that open space, right? And especially that person coming into the family, you're like, okay, now I have to, I know that person coming into the family is also like, whoa, right? And how do I act? What do I do? And so I think it is a big responsibility for the mother or the father to step in and kind of needs to work with the children and this new partner if they want to make a nice household and a home that needs to become a connected area. I've always felt a little pain in that area, right? Of just, I explained to you, I wish the divorce had happened sooner. At the same time, I wish I still had you in that place, right? Or my mom in a place then it feels like this other person is coming to take away. They're like, why are you stepping into this place? That's where I want my dad, or that's where I want my mom. And I think that's where it becomes the biggest struggle, right? That child is just like, what? Why are you now in that place where my dad's supposed to be? Hang on. And why are you telling me what to do? That's what my dad does, not you. And so they're just like confused and they don't know how to explain any of that, right? I talked about how a child is not going to be able to sit down and have that full conversation, which I think some people think the child is supposed to do, and then they get frustrated when they can't, or they say something hurtful, or they do something. And so I think it's important for the parents to realize, okay, we're going to need to work with this, right? And we can't let our issues become the child's issue, right? We need to listen and we need to work with them so that they feel safe and comfortable and welcomed and not in an awkward space. Because I have felt that very much, where I'm just like, I'm not feeling comfortable in this house right now because there's this issue that's going on and I don't know how to talk about it, but I want to talk about it, and I'm talking about it with one person but not another person, and I think it just goes on and on.
Well, thank you for sharing. Just to be fair on the step parents of this world, it's an incredibly hard place to be in. I know that I had a stepdad and I hated him, but not because he was a bad person. He was a perfectly fine person, but a little bit because of all the things that you just described. I just couldn't stand it, right? I couldn't stand the guy. After my mom and him separated, this guy and I started like meeting up and just like having drinks together and just talking, and because I really liked him. You know what I mean? That's like the crazy part about it. I really enjoyed him as a person, but because of that, what you're describing,
right?
And I think,
stepping into that position,
and it just makes it really hard. And I know I've been also in that position of being a stepdad, and because of that experience as a child, where I did not want to have that, I went the other extreme. I did not want to step into that position of being a step parent. I pulled myself completely out, which is the other extreme, and that wasn't good either, because then I was not available at all. So I think it's just an extremely difficult position to be in, to be a step parent. And I think that would be a wonderful entire podcast on just
definitely
being a step parent.
Yeah,
I want to do that at some point. Just to wrap up this part, is like, what are from your perspective, what are the advantages and disadvantages of having a patchwork family?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. It was nice because it brought so many people together, right? So all these siblings, right, that have a different mom or a different dad, and then it brought us all together, and it's like, well, here we go. And we were all connected somehow, for me at least, right? I had shared a father or a mother, and we all just became really close together. Even now with the separation, I feel that we never say we're not siblings to the other one, right? We still always refer to the other person as a sibling.
Just switching gear, and this is going to be one of the last questions, but I'm just interested in hearing a little bit what you see. Just also going back to what you talked about early on with your generation and this feeling realm and the conversation. What do you see as some of the greatest challenges of your generation?
Well, I think we've definitely talked a lot about this. So that's through talking with you, through talking with other people. I feel, and I know this, well, I definitely go into these devices, which even I struggle with so much.
And when you say devices, to be clear, you're talking about media in general?
Correct. Right. Phones, anything, even the TV, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all these things are just like so addicting, right? And having that right there feels so great in the moment, right? You're just able to go on there, you can scroll, you can talk to somebody easily, you can do whatever, you can put whatever you want out there with no consequence, right? In your mind, there's nothing's going to happen from what you're saying. You can go into a comment section and just say whatever you want, or text somebody, say whatever you want, and you don't feel like, hang on, maybe I shouldn't be saying that. Thinking about really how that's affecting another person. Because when you're not face to face, it feels so easy. I'm just going to type it in, I'm going to send it, and then you go on about your day. You're not going to care. You're going to keep scrolling. You'll see a million other videos. You'll see a million other people. And yeah, I mean, I struggle with anxiety, and a lot of people struggle with anxiety and depression. And I think a lot of that comes from these devices, right? Because we have these issues that we need to talk about, that need to be discussed, but we just go straight to this, the iPhone or video games. And I remember that being a big thing for me, much less now, which I'm really thankful for, but just coming home from school and the day at school, just, it wasn't enjoyable for me. I felt I really struggled with that. And so once I was in 8th grade was where the devices became much more available to me. And I just started using them as much as possible, right? So whenever there was a problem, I wasn't going to deal with the problem. I was going to go and I was just going to go play that video game and not think about it, right? I didn't want to think about anything else. I had a hard day. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it, And I think that's what a lot of kids are doing. And we just get sucked into that and we want to stay in that. And along with that, we're bringing in so much information into our brains, which should not even be possible, right? Nobody's supposed to be taking in so much. And you go onto TikTok or something and you open it up, boom, somebody died, scroll another, boom, there's a war going on, boom, this, that, and the other, and you're just taking in so many, there's a lot of horrid things that you see. And all of those things are impacting a child's brain, right? And so when you're taking all of that is causing more anxiety inside of you. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, is that those things that you're taking on the device and you sit there and you're looking there and you're like, oh, okay, somebody died, scroll. And you don't really think about it. Mm-hmm. But it all impacts you. It's just so much information in your brain. It's like overstimulating, even if you're not actually realizing it. But it's just like too many things. And then you're trying to sort out what's going on in one place, what's going on in the other place. You're trying to figure out what's going on with you. You're trying to figure out why you're not doing great in school, or what's going on here, or what's going on in my house. And there's just too much, right? And then what do? We go back to that device so that we don't have to focus on any of those things.
Have you been able to experiment a little bit with that and just consciously shut it down and then go again through phases where you just let it go when you get on it, whenever you want, however you want? Have you experienced a difference in how you act and how you speak and how you feel?
Well, this past year, I spent quite a lot of time out of school. And with that, I actually was not playing video games. And I realized like, whoa, there's so much beauty to the world, right? And I was doing some traveling, and when I come home from school, I told you, I wanted to go straight to the video games and play that, and that felt good. And I was like, this is the greatest thing, right? And this is all I want to do. And the only reason is because there was nothing, I couldn't think of anything else. There was so much going on for me, and I never got a space to just let go and enjoy and feel relaxed, because it would just, okay, well, I have to get up and I have to go to school, and I just feel like I couldn't do it in school. So after feeling so crappy about what was going on, I was like, I'm just going to drown myself in this. And then, like I said, I went traveling, and I got to see all these beautiful places, and I learned a lot about myself, and I worked with myself a lot. And I was at home, and I had one of my friends called me up, and we played some video games, and they were not enjoyable in the same way, right? Because it was really just an addiction to come home and go to that. But when then I went and played, it was like, after a while, I was just like, oh my God, really, I can't do this. I don't want to sit here in front of the screen and playing with these little buttons, and I just couldn't enjoy it in the same way. And a few times, I'll call my friends, we'll play a little bit, and I think that's different. To play maybe an hour a day with your friends on a call, but just a lot of it these days is just to get yourself out of reality. And that's expressed by a lot of kids. I think most common in these young boys, or boys in general, just like that's their way. Video games are just the way to get out of that.
So what's your message for the parents out there regarding media?
I would not be giving that to a young child.
What age do you feel would be appropriate?
I got a device when I was 13. I just got an iPod. And when I look back to that, I'm like, I wanted it so bad, right? Oh, I felt like all my friends had all these things, and you and my mom didn't want to give those things to me, and you knew how it would impact me. And you even made it so that I could only spend a certain amount of time on it. I wish I was not given that device at 13, because it really, you can't do anything about it. You just want to stay on there. And we've been discussing even the phone, having a phone now. I'm wanting to give my phone up, and just like, because I realize how much I want to be on it, and how it takes me away from family and friends and wanting to go and do things. I realize I could just be happy scrolling away, but not really. It just is just making me feel happy in that moment. And I don't want that. I don't want to be sucked into that media. And so, I do think there needs to be a lot of thought put into that. And I think, especially for young kids, there should not be a lot of TV. They should not be having their own phones or iPads. And because I really just don't think it's helpful. And for me, when I think about what I'll do when I'm older, I will not be giving my children devices until they're a certain age. And then that can be a discussion of what they can use. And if it's something like a flip phone, okay, I want to stay in contact, and I want my child to have a way of reaching me. And I don't know about child, but right around that, maybe 13, 12, when they're going out or they're doing something, or they go on vacation with a friend, you want to be able to call them. Having something like a flip phone or something like that is nice to have, so you can call them or you can message them and check in what's going on. But they don't need TikTok, and they don't need Instagram, and they don't need Snapchat. And when they have that smartphone, you're not keeping them away from that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting. A lot of the parents rely on these times that they set on the phone that doesn't let a child go on certain apps, or not to download a certain app, or do something on the internet, and they're going to figure it out. There's so many ways to get all of this stuff on their phone, or to get something off of their phone, or a code, any of it is they can just figure out, because it's just they make it so accessible to do. And so really, I think the best thing as a parent that you can do for your child is not let them have those devices.
Thank you. Very wise words. And there's a lot of data. This is, again, another topic that I want to speak about in the podcast at some point, is about the phone, phone usage. There are alternatives out there. You spoke about the flip phone. There's a new phone that just came out. Well, I mean, there's now the third generation. They're working on that. It's called the light phone, where you have the ability to be on the phone. You even have a camera. You have text. You have directions. You can do your music. You can do everything except all the things that you talked about that are so distracting.
That's the media, right? And being able to go on your phone and to browse through all this stuff can be helpful, right? You're looking for a recipe, you're looking for information, and at the same time, it's really horrible because you can find everything, anything you want in there, you can find. And I think that is really like the main problem. And I think a lot of people want to bring, but what if I want to look for a recipe or I want to do that? We do have books. We still have books, if we want to go and look for that. And if we have computers, if we want to go and get something. But I mean more for the children, right? If your children wants to get into cooking, they don't need their own device to look up a recipe, right? If they want to use your computer to look something up, or they get a book for cooking, I think that is definitely a much better way to do that, And the light phone is something that I'm interested in and wanting to look into more. I just think that's really awesome.
Yeah. You're about to go into junior year.
Yeah.
And you're excited about that? What are you looking forward to? What are you struggling with?
I'm looking forward to, like I said, I've done a lot of work with myself. I'm looking forward to
put that into practice.
Pushing myself a little bit and getting my stuff done. But also, I'm looking forward to just having this new perspective, right, that I have. And for me specifically, I don't necessarily believe in the full way of schooling and how it works. I struggled with that growing up, and I am excited to get out of school and explore the world and do things and continue to work with myself and figure things out.
Thank you, Efren. I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
These I ask everyone.
Okay.
These are my standard questions. And the one thing I would like to hear from you is, if you could go back into your childhood with the knowledge that you have now about yourself, what would you tell your younger self?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people want to, everything will be all right, is when when they're asked that question, they want to go to there. And I think it's a little bit more deep than that. But I feel, I don't know, I'm trying to think of exactly what I would say. Maybe just to continue to keep an open mind to everything and listening to what everybody has to say. And as a kid, you kind of just, whatever your parents are saying in the house, whatever they're watching on the news and they're saying, you take and you go and you say that out in the world, right? Yeah. And whenever another child is saying something against that, you're like, what? No. And that's not true. My dad doesn't say that, or my mom doesn't say that. And so if I could explain that to my younger self, I'd just say hey, listen, you can listen to what other people are saying too, and take that in, which is something I do now, where it's just, I love getting everybody's opinion. And I'm never looking at things when somebody says something as, what are you talking about? Or you're wrong, or that's not a good opinion, or you're not right. My opinion's right. And I think that is you should really just listen and take it all in. We don't need to just be against what another person is saying. We need to learn to bring in everything and look at everything in a good way and understand. Because really what makes your opinion better than another person's, right? And they're thinking the same thing. They'll be thinking, my opinion's better than theirs, right? So it's like everybody will always think their opinion's better. So I think that's what I would tell my younger self is just, hey, be more open and yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you look back at your life and with me as your father, is there something that you would have liked to hear from me that you never did?
I wish I heard a lot more that you were proud of me, because I was always wanting to make you proud and do everything to make you happy. I kind of always wish there was moments where you would have said, hey, look, I just want to tell you I'm really proud of you. I'm really happy. And I think a lot of kids don't get told that. And I think it feels so great when your parent says that, like, oh, you just had a great sports game, or you have an A, and then your parents come up to you and say, I'm really proud of you. Why won't you say that more? Can you say that more? Like, why should I feel so good because you're proud of me? Why are you saying that now? Because I'm doing what everybody else is doing, or just because I succeeded in a class, you're proud of me? Why aren't you proud of me for going and making friends or going out and doing things, And so I just kind of wish I had heard that more. And I feel that has definitely changed, and I appreciate that. But just as a child, I from both parents.
So you feel like I've said it more now, but in your childhood, I could have been more.
Yeah.
Well, I am very proud of you, not just a little bit proud. You're an amazing young man. You blow me away, because in many ways you are much farther than where I was at your age. Well, friend, thank you so very much for taking the time. It's been a real honor to have you here, not only as my son, but also as my guest. And I hope to have you here again. I hope it wasn't too nerve-wracking. I'd love to. There's so many topics that I'd like to continue having conversations with you about. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for taking the time and listening to my podcast today. If you want to learn more about me, check out my website, www.fatherhoodfromtheheart.com. There you will find information about my coaching offers and approach. I would be honored to accompany you on your path, be it on your own or with a parent, partner, daughter, or son. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast. And link and share this episode so that more can hear, learn, and grow from the wisdom of my guests. I would also be incredibly grateful if you could rate and review the show, and please don't forget to leave a comment. I will end the show for now, but remember to be kind to yourself. Until next time, I say goodbye and send love and gratitude from my heart to yours.